I'm Cyrus Reed with Lone Star Chapter of the Sierra Club. On the drive up here, I live in Austin. I'm here with Larry. We're going to do a dog and pony show. We're going to be switching back and forth between speakers, keep things lively. We have a little topic, which we're going to cover in half an hour. I was thinking on the way here, what would my, emblem be if I were running for president? Would it be, what's Clint? Stronger together, strong. The other one is Make America Great Again. Mine would be incremental change, because that's really what a lot of us here do. All you work in local government, those of us in the nonprofit sector, it's about making things better a little bit at a time until it really becomes better. So when I run for president, it's going to be called incremental change. I don't know if that's a winning strategy, but I thought it was good. So just wanted to do a big slide. A lot of us, what they've done here at this library obviously is incredible. A lot of us talk about energy efficiency and the need to conserve energy. And just wanted to put this up here. This is ACEEE, American Council on an Energy Efficient Economy, something like that. They do an annual look at all the states' policies on energy efficiency, and they rank Texas in the middle. And just big picture, they say we're really doing good stuff on building codes, which I know we'll be talking a little bit about. And we really do some great stuff through our state agencies like NCTCOG in terms of funding for energy efficient projects. We're a little bit lower down than some other states on utility and on kind of transportation efficiency. So that's kind of why we're in the middle of the pack. So just wanted to put that up there. And then I think, Larry, you can talk about this energy slide.
Yeah, so I'm Larry Howe. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm very pleased to be able to be here today to talk to you a little bit about maybe we'll call it energy literacy. So part of what we'll talk a little bit about interspersed in this legislative stuff is maybe some challenges that the cities can maybe take back and think about a little bit. So, but to start that, I think one of the key things is kind of understanding how much energy we use. So, and again, I think it was mentioned earlier, energy consumption has meant historically prosperity for the state, and now we have to maybe evolve that a little bit. But basically, big numbers. So in Texas, 350 billion kilowatt hours. So a lot of energy use. Over the last 10 years, there's been a pretty good migration of increasing the amount of wind energy that we use. And actually not necessarily shrinking the amount of coal, but just because of the growth of the energy consumption, its percentage has shrunk a little bit. If you look at how ERCOT views this, they break the consumption down into these different weather zones. And so where we live is kind of the green area there. I'm not sure, it's not necessarily green in the terms of the amount of the energy we use, because we actually use more energy than any other part of the state. And part of that is because we have a lot of people here, but also it's, if you look at even, we use more than Houston, but even on a residential basis, we use about 10% on average more than any other part of the state. So part of the challenge I think we have in North Texas is we use a lot of energy and we probably don't know about it. So we need to try to help people learn a little bit more about that, and we're going to throw some challenges in there as we go through this. But I think that's part of the challenge. And then when you help people understand how much there is and how much they're using, then you look at ways to conserve it, maybe do energy efficiency, and then also try to help clean up that energy that we are using. Well, now I'm going to turn it over to back to Cyrus.
Yeah, I told you we're going to switch around. I believe that you're later having a presentation from NCTCOG, is that true? On funding. So one of the areas I think where we have made some progress is not necessarily at the individual residential level. I mean, we've made progress, but in terms of energy use, but certainly at the state government level, there was a law passed, a number of years ago, but the most recent version of it was from 2011, which is SB 898. And that requires any state government or political subdivision that's in an area that's either in non-attainment or is part of an affected county, meaning they have issues with ozone formation, pollution at the local level, they have to annually report their energy use and also have a plan to reduce that energy use. So we're talking about, for a city or county, the buildings they own, the management that folks like our previous speaker do on a daily basis, managing that energy and having a plan to reduce it 5% each year. Now that doesn't actually mean, the law doesn't mean, someone's going to arrest you if you don't meet that 5% goal. What it does mean is you got to set the goal, look at cost-effective ways to reduce your energy, and report it annually to CECO. And that is going to continue. The reports this year, as I'm sure the energy managers for the cities know, are due November 30th. Now, I do think we could be doing a better job in terms of making that information available to people and accessible. But this is something that's happening, and over the years, the number of counties and political subdivisions that are actually complying with the law and reporting has improved a lot. So that's one thing we're doing that I think is good in terms of public buildings. And that, I go back to you. Yeah.
Okay. So now a few more kind of maybe falls in the challenge category. Earlier, I think the person from Irving mentioned about their membership in the Green Power Partnership, and kind of touched on a little bit about what it is and what its purpose as a voluntary program, again, to help motivate and educate people about green power purchase. So in North Texas, I mean, overall there's about 1,400 participants in this, and 89 of them are from Texas. So we've got a pretty decent representation. In North Texas, I kind of pulled a few examples of some of the participants, some of the cities, some of the other organizations. This can be a business, this could be a faith-based organization. Anybody can join and participate. It's a great way to help build a little motivation. So one of the things I challenge the cities to do would be to go back and encourage, groups and businesses in your cities to consider joining this and participating. And if you're a city that's not part of the Green Power Plan, the Green Power Partnership, to consider doing that. But part of the challenge is, and I want to take as an example here, if we take the city of Dallas, okay, city of Dallas is 100% green power. So we should congratulate, who's here from the city of Dallas? Yeah, so we should congratulate the city of Dallas for being 100%, okay? But I went back and I was looking at the numbers. If you look at all the power that they purchase, green power purchase, and you kind of relate that back to the North Texas North Central weather zone, it represents 0.6% of the energy usage. So while the city as the municipal part of it is actually using a lot of power, but they're also making it green. The challenge is, how do we get the message out beyond just the municipal government, but actually out to the citizens and the businesses out there? So as an example, and again, this is a challenge back to the cities and some of the organizations in the cities, Georgetown University has started this program a couple of years ago called the Georgetown Energy Prize. And there's people are motivated to be involved with this because there's a $5 million prize at it. But I think we can motivate people even without a $5 million prize. But basically they're reaching out to not only the municipal government, but actually to the citizens and the businesses, helping educate them about energy use and how much is being used. And 50 cities across the country have joined up to participate in this. And there's a lot of different objectives that they're trying to achieve, but basically it kind of falls around the category of helping people be aware of how much energy they're using, and then what steps can they do collectively to help either conserve, do energy efficient, or add renewable generation. It's a multiple year timeline, so right now they're in the process of actually, they've reached out, they made plans, they reach out to citizens, they collectively try to help find ways to reduce this, and they're supposed to, in 2017, compile all the results. So 50 cities across the country. Unfortunately, no cities from Texas are participating. So, I think the challenge here would be is, let's see if we can, get one of the cities to identify one of the universities in our area. We have lots of universities, to maybe put together some type of Texas Energy Challenge, or at least a North Texas Energy Challenge, as a way to help bring in not only the municipal governments, but also the people and everybody that lives in the area. And maybe as a first step to that, let's help educate the citizens. Let's provide some annual reporting of how much energy is being consumed by the total city. So in Plano, I live in Plano, this is a couple-year-old data, but we use 4 billion kilowatt hours, okay, the whole city as a whole. It was really tough to find that information, but I think it's available. It'd be interesting if all the other cities could do the same thing. Once you have some of that data, then you can break it down, and look at it, in different categories and maybe some per capita data. But it's a way to help bring awareness to the citizens as to how much is being used, and maybe even have a little competition between the cities to see what they can do to reduce that. You could do a similar thing for natural gas reporting, because we do use a lot of natural gas in residential and business applications as well. Back to the legislative part, Texas is actually not too bad in terms of the policies that they have for distributed generation interconnection. It's definitely still kind of a new thing, but it's improved. There was a project, or there is a project, ongoing project with the Public Utility Commission about the interconnect agreement that you sign when you do local generation. And when I look at it, it's a whole bunch of pages of legal stuff, but it basically says you got to have equipment that's UL certified, and you have to be willing to be there if the power has to be turned off. So it's not overly burdensome, but with a lot of third parties involved, they're trying to look to say, do they need to change that from the property owner to some combination of property owner and third party owner? And I don't know if I don't think it's a big issue, but I think it's just something that they're working through at this point in time. Any questions and comments on that one? I'm not too familiar with that one. Okay. Was also asked if we could talk a little bit about the HOA situation. In 2011, the state legislature passed a law that said HOAs could not prevent homeowners or property owners from installing solar on their property. There is a few restrictions on that, and one of the bigger ones, or one of the loopholes actually, was that the developer could still restrict solar if the property area was in development, which you think, okay, that's not too bad, it's a year or two, but it actually turns out in development can span decades, because developments can keep adding on divisions, additions, if you will. And so in 2015, that loophole was closed to be limited to only homes that were, or developments that had 50 homes or smaller. So from a local jurisdiction standpoint, we're still encouraging people and local jurisdictions to have solar-friendly ordinances. There are a few cities that promote solar, but they have to protect their citizens from actually seeing it. So there are some things that we need to make sure that the cities don't put in some barriers there that weren't there before.
Yeah, and to be clear, Larry, an HOA absolutely does have the right to establish guidelines and say,
true.
You can't have the solar panel be bright pink or bright or whatever your favorite sport team is, and it has to be sort of in line with the roof. So they can put guidelines on it, they just can't prohibit it.
Yeah, and I think the main thing there is that it needs to be done safely, which is what most of the codes drive anyway as well. Yeah, sorry.
Is there any rules that are not prohibited in cities restrictions?
I wouldn't think that would be necessary, but we are seeing a couple of examples with that, and again, I think it's really more of an education process. They're still new, they look different, so we have to help the citizens of those cities be able to talk to their officials and not do that. The North Central Texas Council of Governments has got a really nice website they've put together for local governments. It talks about the best practices, and one of the best practices is not to block street-facing panels, especially if they're south-facing. Right?
So we talked earlier about how ACEEE had given a sort of a middle-of-the-road score to Texas for energy efficiency policy. One of the areas they got a good score on was our building code policy. So in Texas, since 2001, we've had a state minimum energy code for new construction that back in the day was the 2001 International Residential Code for residential and the International Energy Conservation Code. That's going to be part of my presidential run too, IECC now. And since then, over time, we've been constantly updating those codes. And so several years ago, we updated the 2009 code. In 2015, there was a bill that was sponsored by the home builders, which at that time Sierra Club and many others opposed. We actually came to sort of a consensus, which was HB 1736, on a path forward. And what that bill did is it required Texas to adopt for residential construction the latest 2015 residential code, gave a little bit of flexibility in some of the compliance metrics, and also said we're not going to adopt a code in 2018 because that was one of the complaints of the home builders. When you have to update the code every 3 years, it just becomes very difficult for all the trades to get up to speed. So sort of a compromise, which isn't actually a dirty word, it's an okay word. And that compromise was, we'll go ahead and adopt the 2015 code now, but we'll wait until 2021, till the 2021 code comes out to update the latest code. So what that means is every city in Texas, and certainly any city that's in a non-attainment or affected county, needs to adopt the 2015 code. And NCTCOG also passed rules for commercial. So all cities should be in the process, should have either already adopted or be in the process of adopting those codes. I believe Dallas and Fort Worth have already started enforcing the 2015 codes. They actually haven't taken the ordinance to city council, but it should be within the next few months. So that's a big change, and I think a positive change. It means new homes and commercial buildings will be even more efficient. It's 10 to 15% more efficient than the 2009 codes. So those are good positive changes. And then one thing that we at Sierra Club and others have been promoting is, as part of those 2015 codes, there was a voluntary appendix known as Solar Ready. At the moment, it's voluntary. In some cities, we have been working to make it mandatory. And Solar Ready it's not the San Francisco model. It's not put solar on your homes. It's just when you design the home, indicate on your construction documents a part of the house where solar could be added in the future, and also make sure that your electric box, I think this is in the next slide, make sure that the electric box is big enough so that it can incorporate a circuit breaker in the future. It's basically what it means. And so Houston has adopted it for residential. Austin is in the process of looking at it. I'm on that little committee in Austin that's looking at it. We're actually not adopting the appendix as is. We're making some changes, honestly, and working with the home builders to make it a little more flexible and add some further exceptions to make it, because Austin, like these areas, is pretty dense. So there are some areas in the middle of the city where, frankly, there's just shade from old trees and other things. So we're looking at that. But I would say for all you cities looking at, in the process of adopting new codes, look at the Solar Ready code and see if it's a good fit for you, because it's a way to promote solar. And really the idea is, what you're trying to do is prevent buildings from being built that have holes all over the roof, making it hard to put solar in the future. So that's really what that's about. Pointy, sure. So we got folks from an organization called SPEAR here who are working very much on this issue, a couple of folks. But I will say this, in 2009, when NCTCOG adopted the new 2009 codes, compliance at the local level with those took many, many years. We're not seeing that happen with 2015. We are seeing cities, Houston, Austin, Denton, Corpus Christi, El Paso, all the major cities, especially those in the affected or near non-attainment counties, seem to be adopting them. And the enforcement doesn't happen at the state level. That would be more for the individual building inspectors within those to determine. And that's just going to be case by case. There's probably some cities that are really making sure people comply and others that aren't. But if you talk to maybe Jason, he can get into those details better than I can. But yeah, there's no state enforcement of building codes. It's all local. And this was Larry's Show Citizens the Home Sun number. You were just saying make that accessible to folks so that they can.
Yeah, it's on Zillow.com now. So
Okay.
you just put your address in. So whatever address you live in right now, if you put your address in Zillow.com and all the facts of the property, it will actually give you a sun number, which is a kind of a scale from 1 to 100 for the potential of that particular property to add solar in the future. So it's another way to help build awareness.
So that could be something local governments could do, is promote that. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time at ERCOT. I think we have a huge advantage in Texas in that we have an independent grid that's in most of the state and certainly in all this area. And it means that we can have discussions about stuff that will be important for our future. So one issue that's come up is because we have an energy-only market in Texas, we're not, we don't have, our generators aren't regulated and don't serve one particular area, they serve the whole state. We do have this issue with older plants as they become less economic or less efficient or are facing, future environmental regulations, may need to retire. And the issue for ERCOT is, if those plants retire suddenly, you could have some reliability problems, transmission overloads, congestion. And so ERCOT is starting to look at this issue of what they call reliability must-run contracts, which is a contract ERCOT gives to a generator if they plan to retire, and ERCOT says, you can't retire because we need you at that location. So I just wanted to mention that there are a number of changes ERCOT is looking at with these RMR contracts, and the PUC has actually opened up a project to look at this. And one of the things they're looking at, frankly, is in our rules, we only require generators to tell ERCOT they're planning to retire 90 days before they do it. And so they're talking about expanding that time to give more time for transmission planning and other things. So that's important. There's a couple other discussions going on at ERCOT which I think are important. One is to what extent we can allow new resources to participate in the ERCOT real-time market. So one discussion that's been ongoing for several years is loads and SCED, which sounds like a punk rock band, but it's can loads, in other words, your use of energy, participate in the real-time market. And currently we allow on a limited basis some of that, and there's discussion about expanding that, which would help with prices and would also help, frankly, demand response companies participate directly in the market. And then there's a new NPRR, which stands for, what time is it, by the way? I'm already going way too long. Okay, I'll go faster. NPRR 777, this is the idea that we could allow distributed generation, and that could be backup generators, diesel or natural gas generators, or it could be solar, to participate directly in the ERCOT market. And that would open up a new type, more distributed energy market within ERCOT. So those are things that are being discussed. And there are other discussions going on about new ancillary services like fast responsive reserve services, which again would help faster, more efficient gas plants, potentially storage devices, potentially loads that can come on and off. So those are all discussions, not saying any of this is going to happen tomorrow, but in the next few years I think you'll see changes in the ERCOT market. And this is still a big issue is, and people have divided opinions on this, Sierra Club, I work for Sierra Club, they're my corporate bosses, and so we like these proposed or promulgated EPA rules on the Clean Power Plan, on SO2 areas, and all these have gone to court, and there are settlement discussions, and nobody knows what's going to happen. But assuming that a lot of these EPA rules do stick, it is going to make it more difficult for the large and older coal and gas steam plants to survive economically, because they're either going to have to add a bunch of pollution control equipment or retire, and adding that is costly. So it is an issue, and as well as the new ozone standard, and that could impact those plants. And either that's a good thing because we're getting some dirty plants off the grid, or you're concerned about reliability. But I think as long as we do it in a timely manner, and there's time for new generators to come online, I think frankly we'll be okay. But these are ongoing discussions. We really don't know what's going to happen
it could depend on who's president and who's on the Supreme Court, frankly. One area that will be discussed next session is we have a couple of great air quality programs put together by state legislature that all of us pay for through fees and taxes, which are LIRAP, or the Drive a Clean Machine, and that's for middle and low income folks who are getting out of an old polluting car and into a newer one. There are some grants to either fix up their old car or buy a new one. And TERP, the Texas Emission Reduction Plan. TERP has a number of programs. Most of them are about diesel emissions, but there are also some other buckets of money, one of which is for storage connected to renewables. So a number of the public utilities like Austin Energy, CPS Energy, Pedernales have gotten money so they can add storage devices to solar farms, which is a way to help level out the voltage and also extend the amount of time that solar power can come onto the grid. So this will be a discussion, energy storage. There's talk about adding an energy efficiency component to TERP. There's a lot of money in TERP. There's about $1 billion. And so the legislature will be discussing how to spend that money, and some of that money can flow back to the COGs in the cities to help clean up the air. So that's important. There's always concern at the legislature, for some reason, renewable energy has become politicized, which is unfortunate. But there could be a tax, either taxing solar or a tax on some of the economic development programs that have frankly benefited wind and solar, and even on the renewable portfolio standard itself, which Texas has already met, but there are reasons for keeping it in place for the future. So there could be a tax on renewable. One area I know you guys are going to be talking a lot about today is financing energy efficiency. In the past, there have been bills to create a new type of loan program in Texas, mainly for residential, known as Warehouse for Energy Efficiency Loan. Don't have time to get into it, but we may see legislation on that. There could be more legislation on PACE, which again, you're going to be talking about later, to expand it to residential or create a statewide program. I don't have any inside knowledge on that, but we might see legislation on that. There might even be legislation on clarifying the use of on-bill financing and on-bill repayment at utilities, which in some states is common and it's not common in Texas. So those could be new ways to finance energy efficiency. I don't expect any legislation at this point on utility efficiency programs. For those of you who don't know, back in 1999 when we deregulated the energy market, we did put a requirement on the investor-owned utilities, the T&D companies like Oncor and CenterPoint, to run energy efficiency programs. And they've been great programs through the years. We have good measurement and verification at the state, at the PUC, that makes sure they actually work. But they are very small programs. They're only required to meet 0.4% of peak demand, so about 400 to 500 megawatts of energy a year. Through the years, there have been talks about increasing those goals. I don't expect that to happen this session, but it may in the future. What I do expect is the legislature may authorize a new energy efficiency potential study to look at both what's our potential for energy efficiency, but also what are different ways to get there. Because we're Texas, we may not want to do the thou must go and get this much energy efficiency. We may want to create a market to do it. So I expect some legislation just on doing those potential studies. And I think that was about it.